Ladies and gentlemen, why is it that, out of nearly 8 billion people, one person can feel like the only one who matters? It's a question that doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself with urgency. It usually appears quietly, almost accidentally, in moments when you least expect it. You could be standing in line, staring out of a window, scrolling aimlessly, or walking home after a long day. And suddenly, the thought hits you, not as an idea, but as a feeling. A realization that sneaks past logic and settles somewhere deeper, somewhere behind the ribs, somewhere closer to the heart than the mind. 8 billion people. That number is so large it almost loses meaning. We hear it, we repeat it, but we don't feel it. 8 billion faces, 8 billion stories, 8 billion separate lives unfolding at the same time, each with its own joys, griefs, routines, and quiet struggles. We live on a planet crowded with motion, people passing each other in streets, airports, offices, cafes. We brush shoulders with strangers every day, exchange glances that last half a second, hear voices we will never hear again. Most people pass through our lives like background noise, present but not penetrating, visible but not memorable. And yet, every so often, someone steps into your orbit and everything changes. Not dramatically at first, not with fireworks or grand gestures. It's subtler than that. It's a shift in gravity. A slight recalibration of the universe. The same world, the same streets, the same routines, but something feels different now, as if a hidden variable has been introduced into the equation of your life, as if an algorithm you didn't even know existed has suddenly unlocked. That is what I mean when I say my dream girl is 1 in a million. Not because she is perfect, not because she is flawless, not because she exists above humanity, untouched by doubt or complexity or contradiction. Nobody worth loving is flawless. Perfection is static. Love requires movement. She is 1 in a million because of the way she enters my awareness, because of the way she makes the world rearrange itself around her presence, because when she appears, the noise quiets down. Not because everything stops, but because everything suddenly makes sense. You don't notice it immediately. That's the strange part. At first it feels ordinary. Just another conversation, just another interaction, just another moment in the flow of life. But later, sometimes much later, you realize something shifted. You replay the memory, and it feels heavier than it should, more significant, like a marker placed quietly on the timeline of your life, signaling that this was a moment you will return to again and again. She doesn't demand attention. She doesn't announce her importance. She doesn't perform. She simply is. And that presence, that quiet, grounded presence, is rare. We live in a world obsessed with volume, with visibility, with being seen, heard, noticed. People compete for attention the way they once competed for survival. Loudness is mistaken for importance. Speed is mistaken for progress. Confidence is confused with certainty. But she doesn't move that way. Her impact is not explosive. It's gravitational. She pulls you in without force, without effort, without strategy, and you don't even realize you're moving closer until you're already there. That's when curiosity begins. Not curiosity in the shallow sense, wanting to know facts or details, but a deeper curiosity, the kind that doesn't ask what someone is, but who, the kind that doesn't want to consume, but to understand, the kind that doesn't get satisfied quickly, because every answer opens another question. She makes me curious in the same way a good question makes a scientist restless, in the same way an unexplored horizon makes an explorer uneasy, in the same way a locked door makes a thinker pause, not to break it down, but to wonder what's behind it. With her, I don't feel the urge to simplify. I feel the urge to explore. Most connections aim for comfort as quickly as possible. They want familiarity, predictability. They want to know enough to stop paying attention, enough to label, categorize, and move on. But with her, the opposite happens. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Every conversation feels like the beginning of something, not the conclusion. Every shared thought opens another door instead of closing one. She doesn't flatten the mystery, she deepens it, and that is rare, because curiosity is fragile. It dies easily when fed routine, when smothered by assumptions, when replaced with certainty. Most relationships fail not because of conflict, but because curiosity disappears. People stop asking, stop wondering, stop looking closely. She keeps that alive, not by trying, not by effort, but by being fully herself. Layered, evolving, unfinished. She doesn't hand me answers, she hands me invitations. And that changes everything. You see, love that lasts is not built on excitement alone. Excitement fades. Attraction fluctuates. Chemistry shifts with time. But curiosity, that quiet hunger to know another person as they grow and change, that is what sustains connection when novelty disappears. With her, nothing feels complete in the best possible way. Not because something is missing, but because something is always unfolding. She opens doors in my mind I didn't know existed. Not dramatic doors, not doors labeled with grand ideas, but subtle ones. Doors to perspectives I hadn't considered, emotions I hadn't named, questions I hadn't asked myself before. And once those doors open, you can't pretend they were never there. Together, we dream, and dreams matter. Not the shallow kind, wishful thinking or escape fantasies, but real dreams, the kind that stretch you, the kind that demand effort, the kind that require belief not just in yourself, but in the possibility of something shared. Dreams are often misunderstood as individual pursuits, personal ambitions, private visions, but the most powerful dreams are relational. They grow when someone else sees them, challenges them, adds to them. She doesn't just exist inside my world. She expands it. Her dreams don't compete with mine. They connect to them. They plug into my vision like missing components I didn't know were missing. And suddenly, ideas feel more complete. Futures feel more dimensional. Possibilities that once felt distant begin to feel reachable. Not because they are easier, but because they are no longer carried alone. That's when the impossible starts to look different. Not smaller, not guaranteed, but closer, and closeness changes everything. When you carry something alone, doubt grows loud. When you share it, doubt still exists, but it no longer dominates. There is strength in shared belief, momentum in mutual imagination, stability in knowing someone else sees what you see and still chooses to stand beside you. That is the foundation, before kindness, before courage, before risk, before presence, resonance. That rare alignment where two inner worlds recognize each other, where silence feels comfortable instead of awkward, where laughter doesn't need explanation, where being together doesn't drain energy, it restores it. That is why out of billions, one person can matter this much. Not because the world disappears, but because for the first time it comes into focus. There is a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you realize that someone is no longer just in your life, but affecting it. Not by force, not by intention, simply by existing within your field of awareness. It's the moment when you notice that your thoughts begin to orbit differently. Your attention lingers. Your inner world adjusts its rhythm without asking permission. That moment is resonance. Resonance is not attraction alone. Attraction can be loud, flashy, immediate. It announces itself through surface-level signals, appearance, charm, novelty. Resonance, on the other hand, works beneath the surface. It is felt more than seen. It is the subtle hum that continues after the noise has faded. It's the sense that something inside you has found a frequency it recognizes. That is what separates a passing interest from a life-altering connection. Most people we meet do not resonate with us. And that's not a flaw. It's simply probability. Lives pass near each other without intersecting. Stories brush against one another without blending. We exchange words, maybe even laughter, but nothing shifts. Nothing reorients. Nothing stays. Then once in a long while someone arrives and the air changes. You don't always know why. In fact, you often can't explain it. If someone asked you to list reasons, you might struggle. You could name qualities, intelligence, warmth, humor, but those explanations would feel insufficient, as if the truth exists somewhere deeper than language can reach. Because resonance isn't logical, it's relational. It's the way conversations flow without effort, the way silence doesn't demand filling, the way shared moments feel heavier than their duration would suggest. You notice that time behaves differently around her, sometimes stretching, sometimes collapsing, but never feeling wasted. She doesn't just occupy a seat in the room, she changes the room. That's gravity. In physics, gravity is invisible. You don't see it, but you see its effects. You see objects pulled closer. You see orbits form. You see stability emerge from attraction. Gravity doesn't shout. It acts. Her presence works the same way. She doesn't command attention by demanding it. She doesn't dominate space. She doesn't try to be the center. And yet somehow your awareness keeps drifting back to her. Your mind references her without instruction. Your emotional compass recalibrates around her proximity. You're not chasing her. You're being drawn, and that distinction matters, because chasing is effortful, draining, temporary. It depends on momentum and novelty. But being drawn, being pulled by gravity, that's sustainable, that's natural, that's how systems remain intact over time. You don't feel like you're performing around her. You don't feel the need to impress, or edit, or exaggerate. You don't feel the pressure to become something else in order to be accepted. Instead, something rare happens. You feel more yourself, not less. That is one of the clearest signs of resonance. When someone's presence doesn't require you to shrink or inflate, but simply to arrive as you are. In a world that rewards performance, this kind of ease is revolutionary. We live in roles. We move through expectations. We adapt constantly, adjusting tone, posture, language, even emotion, depending on where we are and who we're with. Most interactions require a version of ourselves that fits the moment. And over time, that constant adjustment becomes exhausting. But with her, something loosens. The shoulders drop. The breath deepens. The mind stops racing ahead. There is less anticipation, less self-monitoring. You're not scanning for reactions or outcomes. You're present. And presence creates truth. You begin to notice how deep. She listens, not waiting for her turn to speak, not half-present, not distracted, but actually listening. The kind of listening that makes you feel like your words have weight. Like what you're saying matters, not because it's impressive, but because it's yours. That kind of attention is rare. It signals respect without announcement, care without performance, interest without agenda. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to trust. Trust doesn't arrive as a declaration. It builds through consistency, through small confirmations, through moments that don't look important until you realize how they accumulate. She remembers details others forget. She notices shifts in your mood before you explain them. She responds to what you mean, not just what you say, and those small recognitions tell you something essential. She is paying attention. Attention is the currency of love, not admiration, not praise. Attention, because attention says, I see you as you are, not as I wish you to be. It says, your inner world matters to me. It says, you exist here. That awareness creates safety, and safety allows depth. With safety, curiosity grows. With curiosity, understanding deepens. With understanding, connection strengthens. This is the quiet architecture of love. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but enduring. You begin to realize that she doesn't just resonate with you emotionally. She resonates with your direction. Your values align in ways that feel organic, not negotiated. Your questions about life echo each other. Your definitions of meaning overlap. Even your disagreements feel constructive, not divisive, because they come from shared ground. This is not sameness. It's harmony, like two notes that are different but belong in the same chord. And that harmony creates momentum. You start to imagine not just being together, but moving together. Not just sharing moments, but building trajectories. The future stops feeling like a solo project and starts feeling collaborative. That shift is subtle but profound. Before her, your plans might have felt isolated. Visions you carried privately, goals you worked toward alone. Now, those same visions feel expandable. They feel open to conversation, open to refinement, open to shared ownership. She doesn't replace your ambition. She refines it. She doesn't dilute your direction. She clarifies it. And in that clarity, you begin to see yourself differently. Not smaller, not dependent, but more complete. Because resonance doesn't erase individuality, it amplifies it. When two people resonate, they don't merge into one indistinguishable entity. They remain distinct but connected, independent but aligned. This is why the connection doesn't feel suffocating. It feels spacious. There is room to grow, room to evolve, room to change without fear of abandonment, room to fail without losing worth. And that freedom, the freedom to be unfinished, is one of the greatest gifts love sees. An offer. She doesn't expect perfection from you. She doesn't need you to have everything figured out. She isn't waiting for a polished version of your future self. She meets you where you are, not as a compromise but as a choice. That choice carries weight, because when someone chooses you as you are, it does something to your sense of self. It strengthens it, grounds it, makes you less desperate for validation elsewhere. You begin to feel enough, not because you've achieved enough, but because you are seen, and from that foundation everything else becomes possible. This is why out of billions one person can feel irreplaceable. Not because others lack value, not because the world shrinks, but because resonance is rare, because alignment is rare, because finding someone whose inner world speaks the same emotional language as yours is statistically improbable. It's not just romantic, it's mathematical. And yet when it happens, it doesn't feel extraordinary at first. It feels natural. That's the paradox. The rarest connections don't feel forced or dramatic. They feel obvious in hindsight. They feel like something that was always meant to happen, even though you know the odds say otherwise. That's when you understand that love isn't about finding someone flawless. It's about finding someone whose gravity reshapes your life without asking. Someone who makes the world quieter, not emptier but clearer. Someone whose presence turns chaos into coherence. Someone who feels unmistakably like home. Curiosity is rarely celebrated in love, yet it is the quiet engine that keeps it alive. People talk endlessly about attraction, about chemistry, about compatibility, as if love were a checklist to be completed or a formula to be solved. They ask whether two people make sense, whether their lives align neatly, whether the timing is right. Those questions matter. But they are not what sustains connection over time. They don't explain why some relationships deepen while others slowly fade into routine. Curiosity does. Curiosity is what keeps one person leaning toward another long after novelty has worn off. It's what makes someone ask, "Who are you becoming now?" instead of assuming they already know the answer. It's what turns a shared life from a closed book into an unfinished story. My dream girl makes me curious in that exact way. Not the anxious curiosity of insecurity. Not the interrogative curiosity of control. But the expansive curiosity of wonder. The kind that doesn't rush toward certainty because certainty would end the exploration too soon. With her, I don't feel the need to arrive at conclusions. I feel the desire to stay in the question. She reminds me of how explorers must have felt when maps still had blank spaces. Not fear, anticipation. Not urgency, possibility. The sense that what lies ahead may be unknown, but that the unknown itself is valuable. Most people, when they get close to someone, begin to simplify them. They reduce complexity into familiarity. They replace curiosity with assumption. She's like this. He always does that. I already know how this story goes. That's when love begins to flatten. But she resists simplification, not deliberately, not defensively, but naturally. She continues to evolve, to surprise, to reveal layers gradually, honestly, without performance. And because she does, curiosity stays alive. I find myself wanting to ask questions that don't seek efficiency, questions that don't lead to immediate answers, questions that open conversations rather than close them. What changed your mind about that? What are you wondering about lately? What feels unfinished inside you? What scares you that didn't used to? What do you hope you're wrong about? These are not questions you ask to collect information. They're questions you ask because you care about the person's inner movement, not just their outward identity. With her, nothing ever feels fully complete, and that is what keeps everything alive. Completion is comfortable, but it is also final. Curiosity thrives in openness. It requires the humility to admit, I don't fully know you yet, and I may never completely know you. That admission doesn't weaken love, it strengthens it, because it replaces ownership with attention. When you believe you fully know someone, you stop listening closely. You anticipate their responses. You stop discovering. And discovery is the lifeblood of intimacy. With her, discovery never ends. The more time we spend together, the more depth reveals itself, not in dramatic reveals, but in subtle shifts. The way her opinions evolve, the way her dreams refine themselves, the way her fears change shape as life presents new challenges. She doesn't stay still, and neither do I. And that mutual movement keeps us engaged, keeps us awake, keeps us present. Curiosity is also what protects love from stagnation. Routine is inevitable. Life demands repetition. Work schedules repeat. Responsibilities cycle. Days blur together. That's not a failure of love. That's life. What determines whether love survives routine is curiosity's ability to breathe inside it. With curiosity, routine becomes ritual instead of boredom. Familiarity becomes depth instead of disinterest. The ordinary becomes layered instead of dull. A conversation isn't just a recap of the day. It's an exploration of how the day was experienced. A silence isn't empty, it's shared. A habit isn't mindless. It's meaningful because it's observed. She brings that quality into even the smallest moments. She doesn't rush past them, she doesn't treat them as filler. She notices. She engages. She asks follow-up questions. When others would move on, that attention changes everything. Because attention turns experience into memory. Another truth about curiosity, it requires safety. People are only curious when they feel safe enough not to defend themselves. When curiosity disappears, it's often because people feel judged, evaluated, or misunderstood. They stop asking questions because they're too busy protecting themselves. With her, curiosity feels safe. There is no punishment for uncertainty, no penalty for change, no threat in saying I don't know who I am yet or I'm still figuring this out. That emotional safety creates intellectual and emotional freedom. I can wonder out loud. I can think imperfectly. I can change my mind without losing ground. I can admit confusion without feeling diminished. And she offers the same vulnerability in return. She doesn't pretend to have everything resolved. She doesn't hide behind certainty. She shares questions as readily as answers, doubts as honestly as dreams. That shared curiosity becomes relational momentum. It moves us forward not because we are chasing clarity, but because we are committed to exploration. Think about innovation. Every meaningful advancement in human history began with curiosity. Someone noticed something didn't quite make sense. Someone asked why instead of accepting what is. Someone stayed with uncertainty long enough to let discovery emerge. Curiosity sent rockets into space. Curiosity wrote novels that outlived empires. Curiosity built bridges between cultures, ideas, and generations. Love is no different. Without curiosity, love becomes a system that maintains itself until it fails. With curiosity, love becomes a living process, adapting, learning, evolving. She brings that energy into the relationship, without effort. She doesn't demand that I stay curious. She inspires it. She doesn't test me. She invites me. She doesn't withhold answers to create mystery. She remains authentic, and authenticity naturally reveals depth over time. And because of that, I don't feel like I'm racing toward understanding her. I feel like I'm walking alongside her as understanding unfolds. That pacing matters. Love rushed becomes possession. Love observed becomes appreciation. With her, appreciation grows because curiosity keeps revealing new reasons for it. Even conflict, when it arises, feels different. Instead of defensiveness, there is inquiry. Instead of accusation, there is interest. Why did that matter so much to you? What did that bring up for you? What do you need right now? Those questions don't erase tension, but they transform it. They turn disagreement into understanding. They prevent rupture from becoming resentment. Curiosity is not passive. It's active care. It's choosing to look again, to listen again, to ask again. And choosing that day after day is what makes love resilient. I don't just want to know her favorite memories or her past stories. Those are important, but they are only the beginning. I want to know who she is becoming, what she is growing out of, what she is growing toward, what she hasn't said yet, because she hasn't fully formed it herself. That kind of knowing can't be rushed. It can only be accompanied. And I am willing to accompany her, not because I expect certainty at the end, but because the journey itself is meaningful. That is what makes her one in a million. Not that she is endlessly mysterious, but that she remains endlessly engaging. Not that she withholds herself, but that she continues to unfold. Curiosity keeps love awake, and with her, love never falls asleep. In the end, love does not ask to be perfect. It asks to be present. That truth takes time to understand, because the world teaches us otherwise. We are raised on highlights, on polished stories, on moments edited to look seamless and complete. We are taught to admire outcomes, not processes, to chase perfection instead of participation, to believe that love, if it is real, should always feel elevated, exciting, cinematic. But real love does not live in constant elevation. It lives in presence. My dream girl is one in a million, not because she never fails, never doubts, never struggles, but because she shows up, fully, consistently, honestly. She is there when things are easy, yes, but more importantly, she is there when things are quiet. Things are uncertain, when nothing impressive is happening, when there is no audience and no reward. Presence is subtle. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It simply remains. In a world that is constantly pulling us away, into screens, into schedules, into anxieties about the next thing, presence is revolutionary. To give someone your full attention without distraction, without impatience, without half listening, is one of the rarest forms of generosity left, and she gives that. When she listens, she really listens. Not with the intent to respond, but with the intent to understand. There is no rush in her attention, no subtle signal that she is already somewhere else. When she is with me, she is with me. That kind of presence does something profound. It makes you feel real, not evaluated, not managed, not improved upon, just real. It creates a space where you can exhale, where you don't have to perform clarity or strength or optimism, where you can speak unfinished thoughts and know they will be held gently, not judged or dismissed. Presence turns ordinary moments into anchors. A shared meal becomes more than food. A walk becomes more than movement. A conversation becomes more than words. They become places you can return to internally. Moments that stabilize you when life feels scattered. Memories that don't fade quickly because they were fully inhabited. She understands something many people never learn. That love is not proven in grand gestures, but in small, repeated acts of attention. Anyone can be impressive occasionally. Anyone can show up when it's convenient. Anyone can shine when the moment is curated. But to be present when nothing extraordinary is happening. To stay engaged when there is no stimulation, no drama, no excitement. That requires care. And care is what lasts. Presence also means honesty. She does not pretend to be okay when she is not. She does not hide behind strength as armor. She allows herself to be seen as she is in the moment, not as she wishes she were. That openness invites closeness. Because closeness does not come from perfection. It comes from truth. When someone allows you to see them unfiltered, unfinished, human, it creates trust. And trust is the foundation of every lasting connection. With her, I never feel like I am standing outside her life, guessing. I feel invited in, not to control or fix, but to witness, to understand, to share the weight of being human together. That shared humanity is what makes love durable. Life will test everyone. Time will change us. Circumstances will stretch and strain even the strongest bonds. The question is never whether challenges will come. It's whether two people can remain present with each other through. She has that capacity, not because she is invincible, but because she is willing to stay in the room when conversations get uncomfortable, willing to admit fear instead of masking it, willing to ask for support instead of pretending she doesn't need it. That willingness transforms strength. Strength without vulnerability is rigid. Strength with vulnerability is resilient. She carries both. There is a quiet confidence in knowing when to stand firm and when to soften, in knowing when to lead and when to lean, in understanding that partnership is not about independence at all costs, but about interdependence by choice. She does not need me to complete her. She allows me to accompany her. And that choice, to walk alongside rather than ahead or behind, is the truest form of respect. Love at its core is a decision repeated daily, not a single moment of intensity, not a promise frozen in time, but a series of small, deliberate choices to listen, to stay, to notice, to care. She makes, though, choices naturally. And because of that, life with her feels expansive. Not because everything is always exciting, but because everything feels meaningful. There is a difference between a life that is full and a life that is deep. Many people fill their lives with activity, with noise, with constant movement. But depth requires stillness, attention, presence. With her, life deepens. Moments don't rush past unnoticed. They land, they register, they matter. Even silence feels alive. Not awkward or empty, but shared. Silence with her is not a void. It's a space where nothing needs to be proven or explained. That kind of silence is rare. It means you are not alone even when no one is speaking. And then there is the paradox, one of the most beautiful truths about love. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, not because it changes in scale, but because it changes in significance. Anyone can make a celebration feel special. Anyone can rise to an occasion. But it takes someone rare to make an average day feel meaningful. An ordinary Tuesday, a routine evening, a simple exchange. With her, those moments carry weight. They feel like part of something larger, something ongoing. Like they belong in the story of a life, not just in the background of it. And at the same time, love feels cosmic. When you step back and consider the sheer improbability of two lives intersecting, of two inner worlds recognizing each other and choosing alignment, it feels almost impossible. Billions of people, infinite variables, endless paths. And yet, here it is, unfolding quietly, daily, real. Love reminds you that you are both incredibly small and deeply significant at the same time. One person in a vast universe, yet the person to someone else. That contradiction doesn't weaken love. It strengthens it, because it grounds you in humility while anchoring you in meaning. She makes me feel that paradox. She makes me feel connected to something larger than myself while also feeling chosen in a deeply personal way. And that is the miracle. Not that love exists, but that it exists here, in this life, with this person. She does not force meaning. She reveals it. She does not chase perfection. She embodies presence. She reminds me, again and again, that love does not need to be loud to be powerful. It does not need to be flawless to be real. It does not need to be constant excitement to be alive. It needs honesty. It needs attention. It needs courage. It needs care. And above all, it needs presence. That is why she is one in a million. Not because she is rare in isolation, but because what we share is rare in a world that is always elsewhere. She is here. And because of that, everything matters.